Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video we're going down under what? To Australia. So look forward to that. Grab a Foster's, stick on the Barbie, dodge a snake, and puncharoo. To Queensland we're off to a place called Logan City, south of Brisbane. There the Thorburns were foster parents. And in 2015, along came Tiahleigh Palmer. And we will take it from there. So, let's give it a go. It was a hot, sunny summer's day in the middle of January 2015, which is still baffling to me, that a 12-year-old Tiahleigh Palmer, Tia, arrived at a house in Chambers Flat, a fairly rural area about 40 minutes from downtown Brisbane. She gave a g'day to her new family, a foster family, the Thorburns. The Thorburns were made up of Daddy Rick, Mama Julene, and two sons, 18-year-old Trent and 19-year-old Josh. At 12 years old, Tia had already been in the foster system for about 5 years at this point. Her mother, Cindy, gave her up to the system when she was 7 years old. Cindy, at the time she was in an abusive relationship. There was violence at home. And she thought, well, it was the right thing to do. She couldn't take care of her. It wasn't safe for Tia anymore with her. She brought her to the Department of Child Protection, and while Tia entered the system, Cindy would spiral into drugs, police custody, and eventually homelessness. And so when Tia eventually ended up with the Thorburns, it's all good. She'd been, with in and out of, a few families. None of them worked out, obviously, but hopefully, the Thorburns would be the one. They were well respected in the community, and seemed like a good home for Tia to grow in. They had horses even. The only misgiving Cindy had, who Tia was still close with, was that she'd be living with 2 teenage boys. She didn't like that at all. Rick and Julene had been married for over 25 years. Rick had been a truck driver, but after injuring his back, he couldn't hack it anymore, and so started a fast food business out of a van called Nothing Healthy Here. Wait, is that the food or him? He did this with Trent and Josh. It was apparently an American-style fast food joint, which is, judging by that picture, hot dogs, end of list. Julene, in the meantime, ran a daycare out of the house. And so, as the months passed, the 4-piece family became a 5-piece. They seemed to be doing great. Tia attended Marsden State High School, not terribly far from her new home, maybe 20 minutes, and seemed to be settling in pretty well there. And now, on the 30th of October 2015, was a Friday. It started out, like any other normal day. Always does. Tia had been living with the Thorburns for about 9 months at this stage. And so, spooky season, right? Did they celebrate Halloween in Australia? The day before Halloween, something spooky happened. That morning, Rick drove Tia to school, dropped her off at 8:10, and off he went. However, Tia was not seen at any classes at the high school. She was a complete no-show at school. After dropping Tia off, Rick went to pick up a few bits and bobs for his cars. He loved automobiles. And then he arrived home. A couple of hours later, he got a call from the school saying, Tia was never there. That is when she was reported missing. Now, Tia had run away from their home, a couple of times before. As you can imagine, being a foster child, not the easiest. But every time she did do a legger, she was nearly always found, within a few hours. She'd show up eventually. Not this time. The police began looking for her. Rick posting on Facebook asking if anyone had seen her at all. Nothing. This wouldn't be publicly announced for a few days, something which would be criticised later. The police never informed the public of a missing child. That would be a big deal later, that seems like nobody cared about her. But at this stage, it wouldn't matter. On the 5th of November, less than a week after she had been reported missing, a discovery was made. Not the kind of one you would want. On the banks of the Palmer River, south of Brisbane, lay the body of a young girl. It was fishermen who stumbled across her, searching for snapper, flathead, but instead they found Tiahleigh. She had just been dumped there in the mud, reeds, and shallow water. Tiahleigh was naked apart from underwear, which had been pulled down, and she was in a heavy state of decomposition. So when the body was actually discovered, IDing who this was quite difficult under the hot, November sun, and it definitely wasn't possible to determine a cause of death, but it was determined to be Tiahleigh. And so now you got a missing persons investigation as a murder investigation.
Queensland Police have identified a body found on the Gold Coast as 12-year-old Tiahleigh Palmer. She hadn't been seen since last Friday as she made her way to school in Logan. Her remains were discovered on the banks of the Palmer River on Thursday evening.
It's very important that we speak with anybody who was there over the last 7 days, and that's even if they think that they can't help us. Even if they saw nothing, that's really important to us that they come forward and tell us that they saw nothing.
So who do you, look at first? Well, you start with the obvious ones, the Thorburns.
Did you have anything to do with the death of Tiahleigh Palmer? Absolutely not. All right. How was her demeanour that morning? She was on key. She was happy. It's really sprightly. And I was sort of pleased that she was happy that day. I said, well, we're going to have a good day.
Mate, is there anything you can tell me about this matter?
Nothing at all. I dropped her off.
They were questioned extensively, but the investigation moved on. The school where Tiahleigh was last. It was canvassed, students questioned. When was she last seen?
Police investigating the suspected murder of Queensland schoolgirl Tiahleigh Palmer will this morning take their search for information to the place she was last seen.
They admit they still don't have a motive or no clear cause of death. In fact, they say they sadly may never know.
So she was dropped off at the school, and then she just disappeared. She must have left the school quite early because, none of the teachers saw her. She never attended any classes. But a few students said, yeah, seen her. She was wandering down the halls having a grand old time. So finding out when she left was quite difficult. Also, she had a backpack and a uniform. Where were they? Any sex offenders in the area? They were brought in, questioned, over 300 of them. But that wasn't a huge lead either. It seemed to be going nowhere fast. The Thorburns, they must have seen something though. She lived with them. They might have the key. They might just not know it. Tiahleigh was buried on the 14th of November. Her funeral attended by over 600 people from the community and beyond.
Almost 5 months after the death of Tiahleigh Palmer, her killer has yet to be identified, and mother Cindy fears that a $250,000 incentive may not be enough.
The person or people who know something about this are too loyal to whoever they're helping. So I'm guessing that money's not really going to be an issue.
The people who did it should know that we're not giving in, that we have a team of detectives that are committed to finding out what happened, and so they should never feel at ease.
As 2015 became 2016, summer turned to autumn. No new leads emerged in the investigation at all. The Thorburns were ruled out, sex offenders too. There were no other likely suspects in the area, and due to the level of decomposition Tia left behind, very little clues as to what actually happened to her. Police thought she skipped school that day. Then, perhaps as she was out and about, a passing motorist kidnapped her. That was one theory, one of many.
Again, I would like to just remind people that there is a reward available in relation to this investigation. It's a $250,000 reward, which is available to anybody who provides information leading to the apprehension of the offenders. But more importantly, as I've said before, there is also an indemnity from prosecution available for any person who may have been a part of the offence but didn't actually commit the murder themselves.
It wasn't until May 2016, 6 months after Tia was discovered, that the first real lead came up. Crime Stoppers received an anonymous tip. Someone called in and had information. They had a story to tell, and it was about Tia. And it flipped everything on its head. They told of how Tia had complained about having stomach cramps in the last couple of weeks of October, and how on the 29th of October, the Thorburns had a family meeting. The next day, Tia disappeared. This essentially led the police to do a spit take and start re-examining things they had kind of put to bed already. Maybe the Thorburns were just really good at hiding stuff. Well, not in this case actually, because around the same time, Daddy Rick was also accused of sexual abuse of children out of Julene's daycare, so this was, of course, completely surprising to everybody. It seems like the Thorburns had circled the wagons after Tia disappeared to maintain their, respectable family image. And around that time, the police placed secret recording devices in the Thorburn home. And it revealed how Rick and Julene coached the boys, and also how cracks began to form. Eventually, armed with the evidence they had, which also proved they'd committed perjury, as they could prove they were lying and had lied, they brought in Julene and Josh. What happened was that anonymous tipster who called Crime Stoppers, they'd gotten Facebook messages from wannabe boy band member Trent Thorburn. And the messages went a little something like this. Basically, Trent had been having sex with Tia. Tia was 12, he was 19. So he raped her. He feared Tia became pregnant and went to his parents. They had a family meeting, and the next day, Tia disappeared.
Trent came out to me and he started to cry, and he said, Mum, I've done something terrible. And he said, I've had a sexual encounter with Tia, or something to those words.
Okay, I was going to say, but they words.
No, probably not the words, but I don't really remember exactly what it was then, but it indicated that he'd had a sexual encounter with Tia.
The message was clear.
It was, yeah. And I said, oh my God, mate. I was absolutely stunned, shocked. I said, oh mate, no, how could you let something like that happen? I said, we will deal with it. Rick was very concerned because he knows the implications for a boy of his age with a girl of her age.
Of course.
He was adamant about him doing jail time, that he would go to jail for something like this.
Yeah.
So we were concerned she could be pregnant or something.
That evening, Thursday, the 29th of October, they had a, family discussion. And after Rick essentially told everybody, Julene and the two boys, get out of the house, especially two boys, go somewhere you'll be seen by others. So he was left in the house with Tia. See, behind closed doors, Rick was, well, what I like to call a real piece of shit. Extremely controlling, and the rest of the family was afraid of him, including young Tia. She grew to fear him quickly. She never wanted to be left alone with him, and she started running away from the Thorburn home. And she was alone with Rick that evening. When they returned, the rest of the family, he told them she was gone. She was in fact in his shed and would be dumped along the river the next day.
last time that you saw Tiahleigh Palmer alive, when was that?
In her bedroom, sitting on her bed.
Okay.
I said goodnight to her there.
Yep.
And expressed to her that she needed to stay there and put herself to sleep when she was ready, sort of thing.
And where was Rick?
I think he was outside the kitchen door, like waiting for me to come back outside.
Okay. Was there anyone else in the house?
Nobody else in the house, no.
And then you left?
So the exact words, it's all taken care of or something. So what do you mean by that? So don't worry, don't ask any questions, I've taken care of it. And I went to go to her room and he said, don't go in there.
You know, you said that he was a bit worried about what might happen to Trent.
Yeah.
So we're going from that to killing her while you're out.
Yeah. No, I would never have left the house if I thought that. I had no indication, no feeling that he would do something like that at all.
That's 0 on the believability scale. The sightings of Tia at school, the sightings, which made the police believe that she actually had been dropped off at school, false sightings. They wore school uniform. Every day in school is like Groundhog Day. I'm sure they thought they saw her. Rick never dropped her off that morning. That was all a story he told the police.
I didn't know about it until she had been murdered. And I was informed later that day of everything that had happened, and she had had sex with my brother at a point, I don't know when. Dad called us into the lounge room to discuss that there was a few things happening. Trent had, it was at that point that I was then informed about what Trent had done with Tia. And Dad called us in, sat us down, proceeded to explain that Trent had sex with Tia. And I really didn't want to look at either of them. And Dad proceeded to say that we all had to protect Trent. We all had to keep a story amongst everyone and the public and everyone else that the next day Tia was going to go missing from school. But Tia, he then informed me that Tia was, his exact words were, Tia is no longer with us. And also he said, I hope you understand what that means.
During that discussion at home, did he discuss with you the intricacies of how she was killed?
No. I still don't know what happened there. I just know that he did. That he did do it. And he said to us that it's best we don't know how it happened, because the less we know, the less we can tell.
Rick murdered Tia because his son slept with her, raped her, and feared she may be pregnant. Why? Seems to be to protect the family image, reputation. I mean, this fucker sexually abused other kids, so...
I wanted to try and tell the police that I'd been told what had happened. But I knew that if I did that, I wouldn't make it 10 steps out of the door. That he would do the same to me. I wish it didn't turn out this way. I wish none of this ever happened.
Yes.
Julian and Josh became witnesses for the state after they cracked. And so, it was after Rick they went. It was determined that he genuinely did drive to the school that morning, even though Tia was already dead. I guess he wanted to make sure his car was spotted. And it was! On CCTV, driving by the school. In mid-September, Rick's car was seized. The police guessed it had been used for something.
Can you tell us why your car was seized? Can you tell us why your car was seized by police?
Stay outside the gate, you're on private property, please. Okay? Nothing to say, you'll have to speak to the Crime and Corruption Commission.
And the shitstorm hit the Thorburns not long after. It was the 20th of September 2016 that the entire family were taken into custody. Julene and Josh, who they did cooperate, both were charged with perjury and attempting to pervert the course of justice. Trent was charged with 2 counts of perjury, attempting to pervert the course of justice, and also incest. Rick, he was charged with murder and interfering with a corpse. And then, get a load of this, shortly after Rick was arrested, he collapsed off.
Overnight, he was taken by ambulance here to the Princess Alexandra Hospital. Would you understand he's been involved in some kind of self-harm incident? And it's believed he may actually face a bedside hearing here in hospital rather than face Beenleigh Courthouse today.
It seemed that at the time of his arrest, he knew the Rozzers were coming and they were not going to take him alive. They did, though. He had taken a load of pills, attempting to off himself. If only he had the same level of success with that as he did with the rest. Instead, he was placed in a medically induced coma. He then woke up a few days later, and it was like, yep. Alright, so, where were we? Oh, you killed a child? Yeah. It would come out during the trial that Tia had told her foster mother about the abuse, and she did nothing. The week before her death, she also tried to move to a friend's house, and the Department of Child Safety were also notified. They did fuck all. It was only when, of course, that Trent said he thought she may be pregnant that something happened. The worst thing. In the end, Josh was sentenced to 3 months, Julene 18 months, Trent was sentenced to 4 years, and Rick, the big dirty bastard, he got life without the possibility of parole for 20 years.
Your conduct throughout all of the offending is made more shocking for the deliberateness of your actions and your willingness to coerce every member of your family to maintain false accounts in an effort to cover up your despicable behaviour.
And now, in 2021, all except Rick, they're all out and about. So that's fun. What wasn't fun, though, was Trent's time in prison. He got the shite kicked out of him. Understandable.
She had nothing to say about her son becoming a target.
Julian, what's your response about your son being attacked in prison? Did Tiahleigh tell you she was being abused?
Most recently, in May 2021, it was announced that Rick was to be called before an inquest. They needed to determine how Tia died. He pled guilty to avoid a trial, and hence, he avoided really having to say anything about how it actually went, though he did say, it's kind of drawn a blank on this whole one, guys. Sorry.
This letter, penned by the killer, is the only insight he's ever given into the crime. In it, he writes, "I have no memory of the night this happened, and not much memory of the past 2.5 years. I don't know how I could, in a sane mind, do what I have done."
And that is the end of that one. Quite a twist. A hell of a disturbing one, for sure. It's like if in, The Sixth Sense, if Bruce Willis, he wasn't just a ghost, he was also a sex offender. What a real family that was. The gruesome foursome. Nothing healthy here definitely applied. Well, that's another one from Oz in the books. Glad I kept my amazing Australian accent in the books, Mike. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you taking the time. Alright, here, go on. I'll see you as always real soon in the next video. Until then, please look after yourselves. Stay safe. Mike out.